Thank you all for participating today. The objective here is to have a discussion around climate change related technologies and innovations, and to also understand the role of accelerators in the furthering of such programming. And today we have two great startups that have come from Boston area universities and have received the support of the universities that they've been affiliated with, CDEEP and its affiliation with Tufts University, and Coastal Protection Solutions, which has received support from Harvard University. I've had the privilege of meeting both Alex and Shashir at different events that Equal Innovation was a part of this year, and really excited about the work they're doing. I've also been able to know Bill from his work, first at Mass General and now at Tufts University. So we have a good group that will be collaborating with us today in this discussion. I want to start with just a few slides about Equal Innovation and what we're doing so that you all have a sense of that. Can everyone see my screen here? So our main objective at Equal Innovation is to really connect entrepreneurs and innovators that are focused on mission and impact with the funders that are working in that space as well. And what we found over the years is that there's really two areas where there's a lot of entrepreneurship going on, where investors are not necessarily engaged. The first is startups that are based outside the typical venture hubs of Boston, New York, San Francisco, or London, Beijing, Bangalore, places like that. So there's a lot of really good entrepreneurship going on in the world, a lot of accelerators in South Africa and Europe and in Japan and elsewhere that are not necessarily connected to venture capital. And so how do we do a better job of connecting those innovators to opportunities? And so for that, we've built a global network of about 5,000 accelerators, which we reach out to on a regular basis for nominations of some of the best startups in their space. Usually that's in the impact space, which is where our bread and butter is. And so we look at the Sustainable Development Goals from the UN. We look at climate change, education, global health, and other areas where VCs don't typically hang out. They don't hang out in the demo days in a lot of those sectors. And so we do a better job of trying to connect philanthropy and others to that space. And so we do it in a couple of different ways. One is basic scouting, where we connect the entrepreneurs and the accelerators to specific foundations that are looking for that. The second is global events. And so we had an event at the G20 in Delhi this year where CDEEP was a participant, and we had policymakers from about 10 countries in attendance there. And then we also were partners with the Clinton Global Initiative, where we nominated about 100 of the 200 startups that were nominated for the Clinton Global Initiative, of which Coastal Protection Solutions was one of the winners. And so that's very exciting. And so I think this idea of partnering with innovation centers and accelerators to help select those that have already been vetted, have gotten prizes, and have moved forward is really a successful one. I think it improves on the due diligence process, and it really gets to highlight impact-related startups. And so a couple of examples this year that I mentioned, the Impact G20X was held at the G20 in Delhi. We intend to do a similar event with G20 next year in Brazil. We also worked with the Clinton Global Initiative, again, to nominate those. And then with Hult Prize, which is $1 million prize for social entrepreneurs, where we have a strong partnership around supporting their finalists at different forums around the world, which has included connecting them to investors, connecting them to policymakers, and what have you. So that's a little bit about what Equal Innovation is doing. And I want to get started today with just a summary of some of the announcements that came out of Dubai before we jump in here. So the COP28 meeting just finished. There was a loose summary sort of announcement that was released. It's actually not entirely relevant to the two startups here, I think, but it's important to summarize what went on. There was an agreement to accelerate away from fossil fuels by 2050. There was an agreement to quit carbon dioxide by 2050, and 3x increase in solar and wind capacity as well, and reduction in methane emissions as well. So there was some broad-based generalization, but I think one of the things that came out of this is innovation will be a critical part of the solution towards climate change, because these are high-level sort of goals, similar to Sustainable Development Goals. The solutions actually need to be developed tripling power supply to 3x in terms of alternative energy will require even more cheaper solutions in water and other things and wind power and what have you. And so we're still looking very much at the innovation space to either create better products or reduce the cost of innovation. And so that's what we wanted to talk about a little bit today, is the role of innovation moving forward when we don't seem to have consensus on how to get to that 1.5 degree level. So what I want to start with is with Tufts, with Bill Shaw, who's the vice provost at Tufts University, and talk a little bit, Bill, if you could, about how does Tufts think about these global challenges and build the infrastructure at the university to address them that led to something like CDEEP. And I want to mention another one, Equiballot is a startup that came out of the Derby Center as well. That was a former intern of ours, Katie Fury, who's now got the startup bug and has started one as well, trying to create ballot continuity and security around the world. But Bill, let me turn it over to you and tell us a little bit about what Tufts is doing generally and then specifically around climate.
Sure. Thanks, Nish. And yeah, I think listening to you talk about equal innovations, is really relevant to the challenges we face sort of commercializing innovations in the climate and sustainability space out of academic institutions. For those that don't know Tufts very well, we perform around $225 million in sponsored research every year, do about 100 invention disclosures and start 6 to 10 companies. Like many institutions, a majority of our funding is focused in the life sciences, but we see that changing, and we see a lot of opportunity in the broader sort of climate space, whether that's climate tech, whether it's the blue economy, whether it's sustainability. We see that as a priority. So for Tufts, 3 priority areas really are food, health, and climate. And recently we embarked on sort of a strategic planning effort to think about how we really catalyze the work in the climate space. And what we really learned is that across Tufts schools, there's climate work going on everywhere, and it just wasn't called climate work. So we've got great work on coming out of the Fletcher School on refugees and migration, and a lot of that is being driven by climate change. We have some really interesting work looking at the microbiome of the ocean inlets and sort of how rising water temperatures changes that ecosystem. And so, we really realized that food, health, climate are all connected. And then the other thing too, I think in the life science sector, there's a very algorithmic formula from an idea going from a lab to a biotech to big pharma, how it's financed, the resources are all there to support it. There's a dozen or so incubators in the greater Boston area, right? There's just this natural pipeline. And what we see is that we don't have that same pipeline of support for this broad category of sort of climate and sustainability tech. So that's really what we're focused on at Tufts, is building out that similar pipeline of infrastructure so that we have resources for, big, crazy ideas to start, and then more internal, further prototype development, moving things along the commercial pipeline, then building out, the dollars to support companies like CDEEP and get them founded and stood up, friends and family type resources, incubator type spaces dedicated to this, and then just having that network of relationships with the big industrial players that ultimately are the ones that are going to turn these innovations into solutions. And so we're very much focused on solutions. At Tufts, a couple of areas that come to mind is, we're very involved in the offshore wind industry. Our School of Engineering overall is really one of our more generative schools for most of our innovation. So a lot of what you'll hear is coming out of the School of Engineering. So offshore wind is an area we spend a lot of effort on. Cellular agriculture, this is one of those industries that, you can call it health, you could call it food, you could call it climate. We really are a pioneer there and investing heavily there. And related to that is, it is somewhat of a materials business. So also sustainable materials leaning into biomaterials. So we have this wonderful place called the Silk Lab at Tufts that's, can make, leather out of silk, can do all sorts of fun things out of silk as opposed to petroleum-based products. And so really my focus right now is building out all these similar programs you see on the life science side, on the climate side. And there's just a demand for it. There's a demand for it from our student entrepreneurs, who a lot of them engage in Derby Entrepreneurship Center, but our faculty as well. And we see a real opportunity and an important role that the universities serve in catalyzing this industry and the economic development mission that many of us also feel we have. And so that's what we're up to. We're really excited. Our alumni base want to see it happen. There's a lot of government funding out there to pursue, but it has been a challenge sort of building out that same network like we have in the life sciences.
And Bill, I think Tufts is interesting in that, and maybe you could talk about this from a policy perspective. You know, the Fletcher School is their world leader in policy thinking, probably has been thinking about climate change for 2 decades, 3 decades now. You have the Tisch School as well, sort of around social entrepreneurship. And then, you know, obviously in engineering and medical school and all, probably people thinking about an issue like climate change from those perspectives. And so how do you pull that all together in almost a mini COP on campus every day?
Yeah, you know, I use the analogy that we use in medicine, right? You know, the best innovations have a clinician involved because the clinicians know what the problem is. And so Fletcher has those climate clinicians. These are people that really understand the problem on the ground. The Friedman School of Nutrition, likewise, you know, they are heavy in sort of driving nutrition and food policy. They know what solutions are needed. And so when we can pair up those experts from Fletcher and Friedman with those technical expertise of the School of Engineering and Arts and Sciences, and don't forget we have the only veterinary school in New England,
right.
That, you know, that's how I think some of our best ideas advance. So yeah, no, so we organize sort of gathering events, like we had a Blue Tech Innovation Day, we had a Cellular Agriculture Innovation Day. That goal is to bring these communities together and just lock them in a room and watch them collide and hope good things come out of it.
Great, thanks, Bill, and we'll come back to that a little bit later. Let's move now to Shishir Rao with CDEEP. And as I mentioned, CDEEP was a participant in an event we held at the G20 in Delhi in September, which really was trying to align with the G20 world leaders and their agenda, the innovations and technologies that we think are relevant for them to consider and to know about at the very least. And so CDEEP has some interesting technology around subsea asset inspection. And of course, I'll let Shishir explain a little bit more. And so Shishir, if you could talk a little bit about CDEEP, its origins, the relationship with Tufts, and then we'll get into a little bit about what it's meant for, you know, what your insights were attending COP as well.
Hi everyone, I'm Shishir Rao, co-founder and CTO of CDEEP. So how CDEEP came into being was, like Bill mentioned, we have our innovation management program, and we had a few people from there approach our lab. At that time, I was working with Dr. Karen Panetta in underwater image enhancements, and we sort of came together with this frustration about sonar being the only alternative for good underwater monitoring systems, where it is not at all giving the necessary data that is required for the kind of sensitive ecosystems that the oceans are. So we then connected my specialty, that is the hyperspectral imaging, and sort of brought these two sectors together and started working on underwater hyperspectral imaging, and started to look at kelp monitoring. That was one of the very first grant that we received with Tufts University. This was from the MassTech Collaborative, where we were looking at how we can help kelp farmers understand what is the optimal time to harvest the kelp growth, and see if there are any kind of invasive species that are attacking these farms. And from there, we moved on to underwater asset inspection and monitoring corrosion, and monitoring various kinds of benthic habitats around these underwater structures. The majority of our development after going through few of the incubators and accelerators programs, have been in terms of understanding how we can improve the asset management, because quite often people don't understand the scale of operations that happen in offshore industry. Just to give an example, to inspect the offshore oil and gas pipelines, we spend more than $45 billion and collect almost 400,000 hours worth of video. Just to put that into perspective, if a person has to manually inspect that amount of data, they're literally going to take more than 100 years to look at all of that data. So we know for a fact that people are not looking at all of this data with the level of intensity that it is needed. And it's not that they're ignorant, it's just that the technology that is there cannot handle that kind of data. And that's where sort of CDEEP comes in, and it's trying to innovate and make sure that the process of both collecting and analyzing data is much more efficient. So most of these offshore companies utilize ROVs. The ROVs are bigger than a king-size bed and taller than 7 feet. So such big ROVs require huge ships to actually take them to the places and then perform those kind of inspection. So with low fidelity of data that is being collected, this process is much more inefficient, and you sort of have to do it on a repeated basis. And that sort of is one of the most carbon intensive process in the offshore maintenance operation and maintenance phase. And that's where sort of CDEEP comes in to make that process much more efficient and reduce the carbon there. Nish, if there is a little bit time, then I'll sort of share few demos that we have.
Yeah, if you have we have a minute or two if you want to do that.
Sure.
And also, I'd love to hear your, experience in Dubai and what worked, what didn't.
Yeah. So this is a quick demo of how CDEEP is envisioning this. We can put our device on any kind of ROVs, AUVs, and with the help of hyperspectral imaging, we can in real time give a variety of material classifications like exposed metals, any kind of marine organisms, or a variety of corrosion detection and other kind of abnormality detection. And this is sort of a side-by-side comparison of what you have today and what you can get with CDEEP. On the left-hand side is the murky RGB image, and on the right-hand side is what CDEEP can produce. It not only gives you enhanced imagery, we can give you pixel-level accuracy in detecting a host of different materials, and of course, reduce cost and increase the accuracy and speed. This is one of the patents that we have licensed from Tufts. This is in image enhancement, and as you can see, this video was captured by GoPro, and with the enhancement technology, we are able to bring out a lot more features. And this was rust detection utilizing hyperspectral imaging that we did for one of the inspection providers. And this we did in real time. To help you understand, the orange masks that you're seeing there are the exact pixel location in which we detected the dust. And the most important thing is we can do this in a variety of different conditions, well-lit, well-illuminated conditions versus not uniformly illuminated conditions as well. Just to touch upon the other aspect of how it was in COP, a lot of the things like Nish was mentioning, I think almost 118 countries have signed on to triple their renewable energy in the next decade, and that sort of helps companies like us, because offshore wind becomes a huge part of this renewable energy, and inspection and monitoring becomes a crucial aspect. And I think there was also one more thing that was released, that 20 countries have signed up to become 100% sustainable operations in the exclusive economic zones. And again, that sort of has a huge compliance and monitoring kind of aspects, which sort of helps CDEEP. So I think a lot of good things. So I'm hoping that those things will.
Shishir, you were right in the center. You mentioned the applications in oil and gas and reducing their footprint. That's obviously the one of the sides at COP was the oil and gas companies and the whole debate around whether they should participate. And then there was the advocates and policymakers, and you kind of have a solution that, you know, is relevant to all sides of that debate. So did you find yourself in an interesting position right in the middle, maybe speaking oil and gas and speaking, you know, NGO at the same time?
Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Like, most of the people that I interacted with weren't involved in those kind of discussions. That was unfortunate, but that was the hope with which I did.
Great. We'll come back to it a little bit. I want to turn it next to Alex Berkowitz, who's the founder of Coastal Protection Solutions, which is developing an innovative wave breaker to reduce the height and velocity of waves. And Alex has an interesting background as a design thinker, initially. More, I think, I don't know if you're also an engineer, but certainly the design thinking part of it is there. And the sort of neat, simple solution you're developing has gotten a lot of attention. Winner of the Harvard Presidential Innovation Prize, recently winner of the Clinton Global Initiative Prize in the climate change category. So, Alex, can you talk a little bit about you know, what you're doing as well? And it's interesting that we have two that are sort of ocean blue tech related, and we'll get to that a little bit. But if you could talk a little bit about, you know, what you're doing next with the technology.
Sure. Shishir, it's really great to be in good company. I feel like there's a theme going on here, so that's pretty cool. So basically, what is going on with Coastal Protection Solutions is there's a story that motivated us to develop the wave breaker, and that story is that in 2012, my hometown of Rockaway Beach, New York, which is only 11 miles away from Manhattan, was devastated by Hurricane Sandy, and my parents' house, which I grew up in, had 9 feet of water in their basement. And I saw my neighbors' faces that stayed over during the hurricane, and they were just completely gray, and nobody really knew what this future held in terms of storms and climate change. And it was really just took me aback. And at the time, I was working in the food industry, doing marketing and brand development. And I quit my job and started to develop a solution that would protect coastal communities like mine from wave inundation. So I developed a product. At the time, it was more of a, if there could be a thing that does this, which was, if there could be a sort of cylindrical object in the water that would decrease the height and velocity of waves, that these homes in my neighborhood would have stood. And, you know, my area is a little bit more well-to-do, but the peninsula is a little strange in the way that it sort of gradually, you know, starts from more lower income communities to sort of higher income communities, which I'm not from, but I'm sort of in the middle. And so the idea is that this is affecting everyone, you know, from any income. It doesn't matter if you have a $250,000 home or $1 million home. You know, if your home is destroyed and you have no place to live, this is a major issue. So lo and behold, I decided that I needed to, pursue this idea. And I went to the Harvard Graduate School of Design, specifically with the application that I wanted to pursue this idea. My second year of school, a professor kind of allowed me to work this into a project. And from that, I said, this is an idea that I've had for a long time. I think it may work, but it may be also a crazy idea. And so I reached out to lots of engineers. I reached out to the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, and I sort of said, like, is this a crazy idea, or you think it'll work? And everyone said, including like the town of Cape Cod, said, this is a great idea, and we never really even thought about it. So that was the moment where the company was born. And so it's evolved over time. It's patent pending right now, and we're in the process of doing testing to figure out the exact shape. Right now, it's a 300-foot cylindrical shape with like grooves that are around it. It's tethered to the seafloor and screwed in by anchor screws that I've developed. And I've developed this whole process mostly myself, but based on some input from engineers, because I'm not an engineer, but based on some input from engineers and some experts from the Woods Hole Institute, and also experts from universities across the country and actually across the world. Because last year I went to work at TU Delft, which is known for its expertise in flood protection. So I stayed there for about 2 weeks working on this project with a couple of different professors there. But right now we are testing first in computational testing to really nail down the specifics of the design and the effectiveness of the design. Then we're going to put it in a wave tank in the Oregon State University, which has an incredible program. And then we're going to have a 100-foot prototype off the coast of fill in the blanks, because we've had so much inquiries into places that want to test this out, that have problems with waves, that have problems with major erosion. And we're talking about, like, there's a community, it's not a big community, it's a 1,000-foot beach in Cape Cod that just spent $500,000 to replenish their beach. And that's 1 year is $500,000. So they're very interested in seeing if this could really save them a lot of money and heartache, because it's not easy to replenish a beach. But we've had a lot of interest, even in going to COP. There was, interest in a lot of different places, like the Philippines and Indonesia were interested in piloting it. West Africa was also interested. The World Bank, I'm in conversations with them. So there was a lot of excitement going on about it. I should say something actually that's even cooler than just the structure itself, is that so the way that it works is the wave hits the structure, it bears the brunt force of the wave, then the wave slowly sort of goes over the grooves and dissipates. Now, the great thing is that that's for adaptation and protecting coastal communities. But the even cooler thing is that it does it's multifunction and does two things at the same time. Whereas while that is decreasing the wave height and velocity, we've also built it in that it can harness wave energy, so that we can give communities on the coast where we are protecting directly give them electricity. And there's many reasons. I mean, everyone loves electricity because, that would be less expensive. Yeah. But for me personally, as someone who is a storm survivor, we didn't have any electricity on our peninsula for, I believe it was around 6 weeks. So we were working in pitch black, and we had like the police, like finally the police came and like put the lights on. But it was pitch black, and we had to leave at 4:30 because it got very sketchy. And so, you know, my mission in bringing electricity is to bring a flood resistant transmitter that in these communities, if, you know, if God forbid, there would be a hurricane or a typhoon, that they would be able to generate their own electricity and, you know, not have to go through what my community and communities around the world go through in major storms, where, you know, there's a power outage, and that
Right.
is unbelievably disruptive.
Yeah, and tidal energy, wave energy have always been a big opportunity, and folks haven't necessarily figured out the technology delivery mechanism. So it'll be interesting to see, you know, how you, as you grow, you can connect into that world as well. I want to ask the CDEEP and Coastal Protection Solutions, as the startups here, Alex and Shishir, a question about how do you navigate the fact that you both are doing what entrepreneurs are supposed to do, which is to figure out a use case and figure out, you know, who are the customers and partners for your product and the work you're doing, and yet, you know, in this broader issue of whether it's you know, rising sea levels or something like that, you know, the policy discussion is like way up here, and the numbers are 500,000 billions, all this stuff, when there actually are solutions like the two that you are developing that could have some impact quicker and, you know, certainly more effectively. So how do you balance participating in COP28 and this super high level discussion and sort of get people's attention and say, hey, right here, I got something ready that can make a difference now?
So I, you know, clearly as a startup, I didn't participate in the major high level discussions. Maybe we should, as startups, be involved in that, but right this year, we were not. I would say that in terms of COP, you know, I did a talk at the Ocean Pavilion on specifically on how the wave breaker can be utilized to protect not only communities on the coast, but also coral reefs at the same time. And so there was a lot of discussion with myself, between myself and a lot of ocean nations. So that's one way that we can get our message across. And secondly, you know, I had meetings with countries that are the most impacted by hurricanes and typhoons in the world. And I think, you know, there's no other place where you can go and have the accessibility of all of the delegation, you know, and then if you don't meet with the decision makers, you meet with someone who knows the decision makers. So it's really for someone who is in the innovation space, it's just it was extremely fruitful for us to be there, despite, you know, not directly speaking in the talks, because to be honest, I wish that innovation had a say in the talks. I think the talks were a little bit too politically focused, and there was not enough focus on the future of innovation for climate change. And I was really sad to not see that.
How about you, Shishir? How did you balance the product you're developing, widespread applications, with the policy conversation that was going on?
I actually want to add to that it's not just a policy conversation, it's also the investor network. So both of these people are in a much higher plane than the kind of innovation that is happening in companies like us. So one of the good things that I feel comes through engagement like this will be we have done a lot of pilot projects in terms of trying to show how our technology is working, and you saw some of the demos that I just showed. And having those kind of things in front of policymakers sort of helps them understand it. It usually is like when we try to explain things, it might not get across, but when you show images, when you show videos, and actually things that are where things are working, then they sort of understand and relate how they can shape the policies with the changing landscape and technology. And one of the biggest thing that a lot of people still, especially the policymakers, are still not thinking about is in terms of data. Most of the AI development requires data, and that does not get enough mention in the policy space, or even in terms of investors, because we sort of have this chicken and egg kind of problem where the investors won't invest in us without revenue, and for us to get revenue, we need to show the product and working, and all of that actually depends on the data that you can sort of collect. And I think more and more companies engaging with policymakers, engaging with investors will sort of build the path towards that and make them understand that it is not just about telling some specification. It also has a huge implication in terms of what data is required.
Let me build on that, the question of investors. And so Shishir or Alex, are you seeing there are real impact investors to work in this space, or do you think it'll be end up being traditional VCs or investors who look at the market opportunity for what you're doing? So, curious as to what you're seeing in the marketplace aside from the current downturn. What are you hearing more broadly?
We have engaged with almost 50 to 60 investors, and out of which I would say maybe 5 to 10 are impact driven. Almost all of the others are seeing at market opportunities and things like that. And again, the way we sort of message is also plays a huge role in that. There's a fine balancing that we need to, even with impact investors, that we need to somehow show that it's not just impact driven company. There is money to be made as well. So yeah, I would say with the kind of investors that we are seeing, it's mostly not impact thing. And hopefully with COP28 and CBET 2030 and all of those initiatives, you will see more and more impact-driven investors as well.
How about you, Alex?
I see a mix of both impact investors and people that are going for pure profit. I think it depends on what sort of level of investing you're at. I think there's the angel investors and the family offices that are looking more for impact investment, but also to turn a profit as well. But a little bit less stressed out about it. And there's the VCs, and VCs, I would say, primarily they're looking for profit, but there are a good amount in the United States that are sort of turning more towards impact investing and for profit. So I think the investment firms want to show that they're impact driven, not just for profit driven. But when it comes down to it, when they'll review a deck or something, they want to see where the profits are.
Great. And Bill, to bring you back in this conversation, how far can Tufts take the startups that are launched at the university in terms of financial support, tech transfer support? Like, how much can you do before they have to stand or swim on their own?
Yeah, it's a good question, and lots of universities are experimenting with how far we can drive these things. And I think at a minimum, listening particularly to Shashir and Alex right now, I think there's a role for these institutions and the friends and family type money to get these companies stood up and out in the world to at least take a shot at some of these other funding opportunities, whether it is dilutive or non-dilutive. There's a lot of wonderful non-dilutive funding sources out there, particularly from the governments and the US government. So I think that's really, all the way to the mentoring and spaces for them, and keep, let's not charge them for their license and patent costs up front and sort of take that capital away when they really need it for their product development. I think, the university's investment horizon and mission lets us look at things slightly different, similar to how impact investors are. But, success for me is not just a dollar return, it's the jobs created, it's the support of our faculty. By definition, this is a failure business, and you be okay with that, and just pick bright, smart people to invest in. And so that's why I think the more infrastructure we can build around us, it's fortunate being here in Boston, right? There's lots of resources everywhere, generally, as opposed to other places. So I think places like Tufts have that advantage. And I also find it, right time and place. Massachusetts as a whole, for example, believes the blue economy is really important to its future. We have 1,500 miles of coastline or something like that, between Gloucester and New Bedford. All seafood comes through there. So I'm not surprised to see Shashir and Alex, here succeeding in those domains. And so, being that, that early investor and support it is what I think the university should do.
Do you think that climate tech will ultimately develop similar to the way life sciences is, in terms of the sort of pathways around the research being developed into products, the way venture values patents? Do you see that happening at all?
It's the dynamics obviously very different with the path to market, right? There's a much lower regulatory burden on many of your climate tech technologies. So, for example, depending on how you define it, we've had a recent company come out of Tufts, Zwitterco, which is water filtration and such. And, they're already, I believe, generating revenue, and it's like 3 years old. Coming from Mass General and all my time there, we're happy if we see revenue 7-8 years from when these things start. So I think the dynamics are a bit different because of the lower regulatory hurdles to get to market. That's just
even with water filtration, where people may drink, the levels are lower, and so you can sort of forge ahead quicker.
Yeah, you don't need all those animal and clinical trials.
Right. Are you seeing VCs or other investors who reach out to you, particularly interested in specific things like either a patent or relationships with or that they attended a conference like COP or something? Are there certain things they're all asking about?
Yeah, I think I do think water is one of sort of the top areas of inquiry. Between the ocean and the fact that we all drink it, it's just very relevant to all of our lives. And that might be particular because of we're here. I don't know if you're somewhere out in the Midwest or in the Southwest, you may get different inquiries because of your physical climate and what people just deal with every day.
Great. Shashir and Alex, maybe we'll start with Shashir. Maybe talk about your next stage of your organization and growth plans for the organization. You've obviously participated now in a few of these, global events, and what does it look like next? What are you going to be focusing on over the next 6 months?
So the way that we have been doing this is get a grant. With the grant, you develop something, then you pilot it, and with that, do some partnership. So we just finished our Greentown Labs program, Go Energize program, where we interacted with Vineyard Winds, Avangrid, Iberdrola Group. These are all energy giants, offshore energy people. So with their help, we are starting to work on creating new pilots. And so this has already helped us. It's sort of a loop kind of structure for us, where grants have helped us with getting the pilot. And with the first pilot that we have done, we have received multiple other grants. just a month back, we got $240,000 from Mass CC. This specifically was for looking at a coral reef structure off of the Gulf of Mexico. So most of our next 6 months would be in trying to create a newer pilot out of this particular grant and start building more strategic partnership in both asset owners as well as inspection providers.
Great. And Alex?
So we are building up to September 2024, where we'll be launching our 100-foot prototype off the coast of fill in the blanks of off the coast of whichever coast works best for us in the entire world. So we're in negotiations about that as well. In between that, we are prototype testing. We're doing 2 series of prototype testing prior to deploying the 100-foot version. As I mentioned earlier, we're doing the computational fluid dynamic testing, and then we're going to be doing the physical prototype testing in the wave flume. So this is a really big year for us. We're also doing a raise right now, and to pay for all this prototype testing and to pay for what's going to happen afterwards. So yeah, this is super exciting times. And also we are in development. I have two engineers working on developing the wave energy portion of the prototype. So hoping to have the wave energy portion with the prototype in the water in September.
Very exciting times for both of you and for the startup community in this space. I think, as we talked about at the beginning here, out of COP28, there was an agreement that came together, but it's not binding, and it's sort of a consensus that we're all going to try harder. And so I think, as I mentioned at the beginning, that means that the role of innovation is going to only increase to find solutions to specific challenges that different industries face, whether it's oil and gas, or it's cities and coastline, or just disaster preparedness, whatever it might be. There's going to be very specific solutions needed, and it's very exciting to hear from all of you. So I want to thank everybody for participating. I want to thank Bill Shaw from Tufts University, Shishir Rao from CDEEP, and Alex Berkowitz from Coastal Protection Solutions. And next month we'll be hosting our webinar focusing on the Sustainable Development Goals 1 and 8, which are built around ending poverty and building an inclusive economy, focus a lot in the fintech sector and the workforce sector, training sector. And also next year, we'll be hosting in-person events at the World Bank meetings in April, the G20, which is at the same time as COP28, but the G20 is Brazil and COP29 is in Azerbaijan. So I think I'd rather be in Brazil. So we'll be there, and certainly UN Week in New York as well. So look forward to coordinating with all of you, and congratulations to all of you. Look forward to our next event. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Nish.